Welcome to the YourTown television program. My name is Jeff Kline, your host for this segment, sponsored by the Naval Postgraduate School Foundation. You know, an increasing number of our service members are married now to each other. That presents both opportunities and challenges for the marriage experience and the life experience and the professional experience. We're going to address that now with two of our students who are married. Welcome to the show, Lieutenant Michelle Tanalega and John Tanalega. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it is. John was on a previous show to talk about his research. Michelle, we're going to talk about your research this time.
Awesome.
And we're going to talk a little bit about both the challenges and opportunities of being married service members. But first, let's talk a little bit about how you all met. So, where did you first meet?
So John and I both attended the Naval Academy.
Okay.
And I was visiting a friend from one of our summer trainings. They happened to be in the same company, and I met John kind of just casually there talking. And then I found out the Naval Academy actually had a drama program called The Masqueraders.
Sure.
And John is a talented actor and singer, and he was part of that program. And so I was like, I was thinking to myself, how do I also join this program? And so I joined to do hair and makeup.
Okay.
Very shortly after meeting John and figuring out he was also in that program, and so we kind of got to know each other that way, and
the rest is history.
Yeah. Started
No, I haven't heard you act or sing yet. I'm going to have to do that one. You see, this is why I do this show, because I learned so much about people that I didn't know. That's great, Michelle. What made you decide to go to the Naval Academy?
In my high school had a Navy JROTC program.
Oh, great.
So the junior ROTC program
Sure.
for high schoolers. And I had a Navy commander. He was a P-3 pilot, and he told me about the Naval Academy. The Navy has an entire college, and I said, well, that sounds great. And so I went to the summer program there at the
Now, summer program, you mean, was that your senior year in high school or just before your senior
Just
year?
before, I think.
Right,
Yeah, just
before the senior in high school. And just to make, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's available to local high school students
Absolutely.
here, too.
Yeah,
Right.
I highly recommend it. If you're interested in any kind of service academy, they usually have a summer program, usually about a week or so. Ours was called Summer Seminar, and you get to go and you get to experience life as a midshipman, from living in the barracks to our, well, we call it Bancroft Hall, but
Right.
you know, depending on your school, I guess. And then you know, eating in the chow hall, going around campus, and kind of just seeing what day-to-day life would be like during and after your time at the academy.
So you had no family members be in the Navy at all? You're the first as far as your family goes?
I was the first. I think my grandfather was in the Navy, but unfortunately had passed before I had met him.
Right.
And then my father is a retired lieutenant colonel in the Army. So.
Oh, really? What does he think about you going in the Navy?
He was very proud.
Oh, that's
he was
great.
very proud. Yeah,
That's fantastic.
So he was very happy about it.
So, John, real quick, review, where are you from and why did you decide to go to the Academy?
So I am from Las Vegas, Nevada, so going to the Naval Academy seemed like the
Sure,
natural
very close to the
decision.
ocean. Yes, exactly.
But my parents are both retired Navy. My father's a retired senior chief petty officer, and my mom is a retired chief petty officer.
Well, there's some married service members as well. See, that's great.
So I'd heard a great deal about the Navy from them, heard their sea stories when I was growing up, and when it came time when I was a sophomore and junior in high school, and I was thinking about which college I wanted to go to, sort of a similar situation. Mom and Dad brought up that the Naval Academy was an option, and that I would be a naval officer after I graduated, and similarly went to summer seminar and decided that's what I wanted to do, and that I'd have a few sea stories of my own before, before too long.
Well, that's fantastic. And what do the two chiefs think about having an officer as a son?
They are also very proud, and they remind me regularly. So.
Oh, that's good.
I'm
And
very
maybe
fortunate to
provide
have their
some
support.
coaching and,
Yes.
and tips on being a junior officer. Absolutely.
Most naval officers rely on the advice of good chief petty officers, and I guess I just had some of that advice very early on. So I'm very fortunate.
You know, it's funny. We all remember our first things. I remember my first chief, Chief Bartholomew. Do you remember your first chief,
Oh,
Michelle?
yeah. Well, I started out without one, but then I got a couple of different chiefs. But yeah, Chief George stands
Sure.
out in my
They were the
mind,
ones
yeah.
that guide us. And
Yeah.
how about you, John? Do you remember your first chief or the one that provided you the guidance?
Yeah, Chief Miranda.
Yep,
Yeah.
there you go. It's
Solid, yep.
we are, in fact, products of that fine community, so that's great. I hope your parents are watching this because that's exactly the contributions they've made throughout their career. Well, so obviously you went from hair and makeup and acting to a little closer relationship. Tell us a little bit about how that evolved, and we have a marriage picture here. Where was it taken? Let's bring up the marriage picture.
Sure.
That you guys are in whites. You're in wedding whites, and you're in your whites, and it's crossed sword, which is a great way to start a wedding. So tell us how that happened.
Sure. So John proposed. It was New Year's of 2014.
2013.
2013. We got married around the same time in 2014. So around
about a year-long engagement.
Year-long engagement, and then so December 29th, 2014, we got married in Fallbrook, California, and we had a fairy tale wedding. I had a horse and carriage. And
oh, did you really? That's great.
Yeah.
Did you let him in it?
Afterwards.
Oh, afterwards.
Yeah,
not before.
Not before.
You were delivered there with the horse.
Yeah, my father delivered me.
Oh, that's great.
To the ceremony site, and it was beautiful. And then had a couple friends from the ship come over and do the sword arch, and his friends also from the military were in his groomsmen. So
were you active duty at the time?
I was.
And so you were assigned to a ship too. Is that right?
So correct. Sorry.
So how did you work that out? How did you work the schedules out?
So it was. So we chose. It was a December wedding. So there were. Both of our ships were not on deployment. So
I see. So you were on Christmas stand down or near Christmas stand down.
Yeah, exactly.
Very wise. You got to do that.
Yeah.
You have to compromise sometimes the needs of the service with personal things. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
And well, now tell us. You're both surface warfare officers, and let's educate me and the audience, of course, on what that means. So, Michelle, what was your first job on the ship?
So my first job on the ship was.
And which ship was it? I'm sorry.
I was after commissioning. I was stationed in San Diego on board FFG 43 USS Thatch.
Oh yeah,
which was one of the last frigates standing out there.
I know. I served on one, believe it or not. But go ahead.
It was a great tour. I was one of 5 officers, one of 5 female officers on that ship. And
what was your job?
And I was first lieutenant, so I was in charge.
Wow, that's actually pretty hard. First division and keeping the deck straight and that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. So yeah, I was in charge of first division, and the bosun mates, one of the longest running
one of the oldest races.
Yes, absolutely.
There. And so I was very proud of that fact, and I was very proud to keep the ship looking good and in charge of a lot of evolutions such as anchoring, unreps, and flight quarters.
That's right. So. That's a real leadership position, without a doubt. And John, what was your first job?
So I was on also a home port out of San Diego on the USS Dewey, guided missile destroyer DDG 105. And I was the auxiliaries and the electrical officer for my first half of my first tour.
Which is actually a pretty hard job. Now, did you qualify EOW at that time as well, the engineering officer of the watch?
I did on my first ship as well. So I was very fortunate in that way. It's a challenge, but it was a well worth it. I think.
I call it getting out of the way, but you got the experience. You needed the experience. Now you got it. Sure.
And then I was first lieutenant for the latter half of my first tour.
Did you teach him anything about being first lieutenant when we had that second tour?
No, but we would play a game. You never guess what my bosun mates did today.
Oh, that's right. Just exactly what imaginative things that they get into. Yeah. Now, were you first lieutenant? You're in fire tour, or did you have a follow-on division officer tour, Michelle?
For my first tour, I was entirely first lieutenant, and then my ship got decommissioned.
Right.
So I left my first tour a little early, and then I went on to Decatur on a destroyer to be as well.
Oh, okay. So you're the ASW officer. That must have been fun. Now, did you go to school in San Diego to do that and to get your qualifications as the ASW officer?
I did, yes. I went to two months of school to do that, and then reported on board.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, did you deploy? Did you get a chance to deploy when you did that?
On Decatur, we didn't deploy. We did a fairly long underway. We had to pick up a sub down in...
what do you mean pick up a sub?
So
I mean, you didn't lift the
sub. So they had decommissioned a sub, and they were basically towing it back. And they had,
you were towing a submarine, is that right?
Well,
escorting.
We were escorting a tow.
Oh, you were escorting the tow.
Yeah, so
boy, as ASW officer, I would have loved to have that picture. The ASW officer standing on the fan tow with a submarine behind it.
It's quite a tow d'oeil. Right?
Yeah, a tow d'oeil. But I'm sorry. So you escorted that?
Oh yeah, no worries. So it was quite the event, but we basically just made sure the sub was safe at all times and made sure it didn't go anywhere. So we went down to Panama. picked it up after it crossed the canal, and
Right.
then brought it back up the coast and dropped it off in Bremerton.
But you didn't make any port visits at that time. You were at sea the entire time?
We stopped in Panama.
Oh, you
for
did? So you
a
got to
couple
Panama
days.
City a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, and then also I did that on Thatch too, doing anti-narcotics down in Fourth Fleet.
That
But-
could actually be quite challenging operations, and a lot of and strenuous on First Division because of the amount of boardings, small boat
Absolutely.
operations that occur in that counter-drug operations and that sort of thing.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Well, great. So then after your initial tours, you both decided to come to postgraduate school. Now, John, we had a whole segment on you, and we're going to touch it lightly. But Michelle, what are you studying?
Currently I'm studying oceanography with a specialty in undersea warfare.
Well, now that's pretty cool because, and that follows on with the ASW thing, right?
Right.
So your program is undersea warfare, but you're focused on oceanography. And what are your areas of interest or research?
So currently, interests of research are basically sound propagation. We do study a lot of how sound propagates through the ocean and how different environments and different sensors can affect that.
So is it on sensors and the same thing?
It's
or?
on applying machine learning techniques to identify marine mammal noises and passive acoustic recordings.
Oh, well, now what you're talking about really is helping a sonar operator through machine learning be able to recognize biology. See, now I can't say it. It's like biotic type things instead of the actual submarine, right? So machine learning, it deals with statistics and data and that sort of thing, and you're working in that area?
Yes, sir. So very preliminary kind of research, and just focusing right now on purely biological calls that we have
Right.
for some data sets. But hopefully we hope to eventually further the research into onboard use for operators to exactly identify different types of submarines versus biologics, and just help in the ASW problem.
Sure,
there.
and actually, because of course we search for submarines with acoustics, so sometimes you might hear a whale, you might hear snapping shrimp, or you might get active return from a knuckle in the water and that sort of thing. And so it sounds like what you and your faculty advisors are doing are actually looking at that data, so be able to quickly recognize it and put that into the suites of the sonars themselves, which is fantastic. That's great work. Well, then that old movie that you all aren't even old enough to remember, the Hunt for Red October, when Jonesy.
That's one of our favorites. So
oh, there we go.
we
When
watch
Jonesy
it.
starts to identify those, you're going to be helping Jonesy,
Yes,
aren't
sir.
you?
We watch it
Well, that's
regularly.
great.
I hear singing, sir.
That's right. Now, John, you're not doing research actually, you are doing research, but you graduated.
I did.
And you're waiting for your department head class. Now, both of you are going to go to department head class at the same time. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's actually good. We're talking about how the Surface Navy helps and challenges
Yeah.
the wedding part. But tell us a little bit about your research at MPS and what you're doing now.
So my thesis focused on using computer-based simulation to model unmanned surface vehicles. So it's a very, very developmental stage right now. The prototypes that are there, they're just testing engineering concepts, making sure things work at sea. So computer-based simulation offers a very cost-effective way of testing what is important, what is not important, and where further research should be done, where to direct those limited resources. So my thesis was using the software that we had. Is very new software in a very developmental stage as well. And now that I have some time post-graduation to study and do some research, just furthering that, adding some more complexity to the model, and then exploring some more detail and in-depth what unmanned surface vessels can do.
Great. Well, both of you are doing important research, a very applied research. So, although Michelle, yours is more base right now, it's quickly going to be applied, hopefully, and your faculty will make sure that crosses the goal and helps our sonar operators out there, as well as our future ASW officers. So, what is your next step? You're going to go to department head school, which means you're going to be in charge of those division officers and all those divisions. Michelle, what would you like to be as a department head?
I think as a department head, I'm looking at doing either the weapons officer position, kind of staying in the same department, and I'm just very familiar with that and just really enjoy that.
Mentor those future ASW officers and gunnery officers and first lieutenant, or is the first lieutenant in the weapons department
Operations.
still? In operations,
Yes,
okay,
sir.
so they moved that top. So what type of ship, though, do you want to go to?
Hopefully a destroyer.
Okay.
Still a destroyer. I really enjoyed that ship, and yeah, it was just a really nice tour.
And
So
where do you want to go? What area?
we're hoping maybe Pearl Harbor. So maybe listen.
Oh, so the middle Pacific, the Pearl Harbor area. Sure. And John, do you want to do the same thing, or what are you looking for?
So I'm looking to be so my second division officer tour as the fire control officer on a destroyer. So I have an appreciation for the combat systems side of things, but I would like to go back to engineering, so to be chief engineer on a destroyer.
You know this is being recorded, right?
Yes,
Your
yes.
detailers will actually hear you say this.
Be careful what you wish for.
That's
but,
right. Because there's all kinds of engineering plants out there, more than just DDG.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. No, actually that is good. You know, I've learned through my career, and you all will get this appreciation, I'm sure, that there are all problems in each department. Some of them are very concrete, mainly in engineering. You know what's broken, you need to know what's fixing it, that sort of thing. In combat systems, we're still dealing with electric theory in some cases, and so we replace parts until we figure out what it is. And operations, there's thousands of problems and thousands of solutions, and so you just have to go through that. Well, that's fantastic. Well, let's talk a little bit about what you view as the challenges and opportunities as a married couple. How much has it constrained your career, or how much opportunities do you have because you are married? And what processes do you go through as you advance your career, knowing that you're a married couple?
Well, I'd say that PERS in Millington, Tennessee, that handles officer detailing and officer assignments, has been very, very accommodating and very helpful. As a dual military couple, they're very, very understanding in the way in which they assign us. So co-location is a very high priority for them, and we've had very, very positive interactions with them as far as figuring out where we'd go when we were both on our second ships. I was stationed in Hawaii at the time. Michelle was stationed in San Diego,
right.
And they were very accommodating and helpful, getting us both to Monterey, reporting at the same time, and extending me here for an extra 3 months while Michelle was wrapping up her master's degree, and then getting us to the same department head class. So all in all, the Navy's been very helpful in keeping us co-located since we have been married, and it does pose a challenge, especially when we start going back to sea here in a year and some change.
Yeah.
But though there is time apart, and that time is not necessarily the best, not enjoyable, I find that through the nature of the work, being forced to be apart makes us appreciate the time that we are together all the more.
Very much so. So, Michelle, do you have the same detailer as John?
We do, yeah.
Okay, so that helps a little bit.
Yeah, so.
And do you normally ask for high fleet concentration areas so that it's easier for them to, or do they advise you on that?
They definitely look for, it is a lot easier in the fleet concentration areas. There's a lot more ships, and so there's a lot more jobs going around, and then it's just a lot easier just to kind of detail us at the same time, just because of the volume of ships.
Well, I want to bring up one more picture before we close. We had Marine family on, and they showed the Marine Corps Ball. I want to show a picture of you two at the Navy Ball here in Monterey. And another thing that we celebrate with our traditions is the Navy Ball and the Navy's birthday in October. And it's a great picture, and so we'll bring that up on the video and let the audience see that. But John and Michelle, thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you for your service in the Navy, and hopefully you've gained an appreciation and much stronger education here that you can apply for your future service. All right, and thank you for joining us at the YourTown television program. I'm Jeff Kline, your host, and we look forward to future discussions of how Naval Postgraduate School contributes both to our nation, our country, internationally, and to our local community. Look to see you forward then.